No matter how big or small our achievements are, let's go after what we really are interested in. Let's go for it.
It all starts with a desire to make a change.
Kepotong ya? Mau pindah saja saya yang di situ?
It all starts from here, from the desire to make a change. Dreams, imaginations, or even delusions are no pseudo. They are actually for real. They will literally come to realize if we are determined to achieve them all. Everything to know, everything to change, everything worth imagining are all provided. Now is the time for us to gather knowledge, experience, and networks. The day we have been.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the international webinar titled Publish and Progress, Excelling in Academic Publishing During Grad School with our distinguished speaker, Dr. Hoang from the University of Western Australia. I am Jenderal, and it is an honor to serve as your Master of Ceremony for today's event. First of all, let us express our gratitude to the God Almighty for His blessings, which allow us to gather virtually in this enlightening event. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. We would also like to extend our warmest welcome to our honorable speaker, Dr. Hoang from the University of Western Australia, our respected moderator, and all participants from various institutions. We are also pleased to have the presence of the Prof. Dr. Eko Siono, MSI AKCA CPA, as the head of the accounting department, who has taken the time to be able to attend today's event. Not to forget, I would like to thank all the ladies and gentlemen of the Faculty of Economic and Business Unsud, academic community, and all attendees who have joined us today. Now, allow me to present the schedule for today's event. First, we're going to have opening, and then we have welcoming speech and opening from Professor Dr. Eko Siono, MSI AKCA CPA, as the head of accounting department. And then we're going to have photo session, and then we're going to have the main event, which is Dr. Hoang as the resource person, and which will be guided by our moderator. Next, we have discussion and Q&A session, and then we have closing statement from the speaker, and then we're going to have certificate handover and then closing. And that is all for the arrangement for today's Publish and Progress Excelling in Academic Publishing during grad school. Now, without further ado, let us welcome Professor Dr. Eko Siono, MSI AKCA CPA, as the head of the accounting department to deliver his speech and opening. For Professor Dr. Eko Siono, MSI AKCA AKCA. The time is yours.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, first of all, to Dr. Lei Hyang as the speakers today. So we are from the Accounting Department of Faculty of Economics and Business, Jenderal Soedirman University. Currently, before, first of all, also thank you so much for the committee, the head of committee, if I'm not mistaken, Bu Eliada, Pak Rian, Bu Popi, Prof. Nina as the head of PhD program, and also Bu Kiki Srijege as the moderator as well. Dr. Lei Hang, our study program, particularly for this PhD, actually is still emerging. We are currently in the third year. So we have 3 batch of students, and currently we are in the third. And hoping with this activity, we will be able to bolster our maybe capability, because also we are under our faculty all study program heading to the international accreditation as well. We try to do or listed in the ASCSB. So such activity like this afternoon would be very beneficial for us, particularly for the evidence for accreditation. And also almost audience today, maybe almost of them are PhD student and also master student as well. And they have obligation to make publication, even though maybe not as strict as in the Australian university, but at least for the PhD student here, they should submit minimum one Scopus journal. So that's why the sharing from you will be giving us insights. So our student will be able to do the similar way, how to publish, how to choose the selective journal, and how to choose maybe the best one from many choices. So thankful for your joining us, and also for your respective, because we know that of course you are extremely busy, but you still give us a chance to delay for your speech today. So welcome to our faculty. Thank you so much again, and I think not too long for me. Thank you so much for Dr. Lei Hang and all committees, the head of study program, and all faculty members of our department. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Eko Siono, MSI AKCA CPA, for the opening and warm speech. Now, before we continue, let us take a group photo to commemorate today's event. We kindly ask all participants to turn on your cameras, and please stay in position until the committee confirms that the photo has been successfully taken. Thank you everyone for your cooperation. We hope this photo will serve as a wonderful memory of today's webinar. Now let me introduce our moderator for today's event, which is Dr. Poppy Dian Indira Kusuma, SAMSI AKCA. She is one of the esteemed lecturers in the Department of Accounting, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. Currently, she also serves as the Deputy Director of the International Relations Office at Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, and she will guide us today's session and facilitate the discussion space during the Q&A segment. Without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Poppy Indira Kusuma, SA MSI AKCA, to lead the session. For Dr. Poppy Dian Indira Kusuma, SA MSI AKCA, the time and screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Deandra, for the nice introductions. Deandra, is my voice clear?
Yes, it's audible.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. As mentioned by the Master of Ceremony earlier, I am Dr. Poppy Dian Indira Kusuma. I'll be your moderator during the sessions, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our international webinar. And the topic we are going to raise this afternoon is Publish and Progress, Excelling in Academic Publishing During Grad School. As mentioned by our head of department, Professor Eko Suyono, publication can be one of the keys to success for our graduate students. The publication process, unfortunately, is often challenging and requires students to take a long time to complete. So, and there are some cases in which students fail to produce publications, resulting in a study failure. So therefore, this webinar is very significant for our students, and it is important for students to always improve their competencies and also skills in research. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be having around 2.5 hours to discuss about publications, and we hope this webinar will run smoothly, no internet and other technical trouble during the sessions. And most importantly, we also hope that by the end of the sessions, everyone will get knowledge, insights, and probably the best possible recommendation from the speaker, particularly regarding the strategies toward a publication during grade school. Therefore, I will need a lot of questions from you to dig for more information from our speaker. So please get your question ready during the sessions. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to draw your attention to the agenda. This session would be divided into two. The first session would be sharing from the speaker, and then the second session would be Q&A time. In the Q&A session, you can directly share your comments by pushing the raise hand button, or you can drop your questions through the chat box. Well, joining with us now, our esteemed speaker, Dr. Lei Hoang from the University of Western Australia. He is going to talk a lot about academic publications. Good afternoon, Dr. Lei Hoang.
Hello, Poppy. Can I call you Poppy or?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. Poppy is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, let me express my gratitude to Professor Eko Suyono for your nice work during the opening speech. Yeah, I was invited by Kiki a couple of weeks ago to talk in this seminar, and honestly, this is the first time I've been doing something like this since my PhD graduate. So I'm a little bit nervous, honestly. Anyway, it is a great opportunity to be around by a lot of PhD students, academics, and staff here talking about publications. Hopefully, you guys can learn something from me today, and I can also learn something from you guys today. And probably it will open some opportunities for collaboration later in the future between the two universities, between me and some of the audience today, and between you guys, of course, right? So my presentation today is pretty, I think, I don't know how long it lasts. I prepared something, but because it's the first time I'm doing this and I just finished all my slide deck yesterday, so I don't know like how long it lasts for me to. So, but anyway, I try to finish within the time frame. And honestly, I don't want to like talk in just one way. I want kind of interaction between the speaker and audience. So if you have any questions during my talk or my presentation, feel free to interrupt and ask. So I'm happy to answer and guide you through the maybe what you need to know more about what I'm talking about. Okay, let me share my screen. Sorry, I'm not using Zoom quite a lot, so probably it take me a little bit time to be familiar with the platform, because
Okay.
most of the time I just use Teams. Can you see
That's
my
okay.
screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, it's working now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, about me, maybe because Kiki already asked me for the CV and the headshot. So this is my personal website. So you can see that if you want to find out more about me, so just go into the website. The very brief introduction about me. My name is Lai, as you know, and I'm currently working as a lecturer at the University of Western Australia. My PhD journey started back in 2018 when I started at University of Western Australia, and I spent I think 3 or 4 years there. I graduated in 2022 and moved to Monash in Melbourne and worked as a research fellow in there for roughly 1 year and a half. And then I went back to UWA and worked as a lecturer. It's just early this year. So basically, I'm still a fresh graduate, PhD graduate. So I hope that my experience during my PhD will somehow useful for you guys as a PhD students, especially in terms of publications. So that's about me. So it's a time to find out about you guys a little bit. Because based on the information Kiki told me, most of the audience today are PhD students. So I designed several questions that target PhD student, asking about something, asking something about your target, your experience in publication, and etc. So if possible, could you please scan the barcode and answer those questions in the survey? And just so you know, the survey is totally anonymous. So I just collect the answer, but not your personal information. So don't worry about leaking any private data or anything. I think I will please show the. No voice. Sorry. Okay, I think can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you're good, Lai.
Yeah, thanks, Kiki. Yeah, I think we already have enough some information in here. So I was pretty surprised that like the majority of you guys are master students. So it's very good because you are considering publication or something like that from the very early stage. Maybe you want to do PhD later, and if it is very good to know about the publication process even before you start. And the other half is PhD, PhD students, as expected. And the majority of you are in the first year, right? So yeah, it's expected because we are learning to publish, and there are quite plenty of time ahead of you. So it is good to start at early stage. Um, so yeah, quite a lot of you already have some publications, at least one. So maybe something I'm gonna present you already know about. So if we can, if you have any idea or any opinion or any contribution, feel free to interrupt me, and we can discuss further. Yes, so you have some experience to in submitting a manuscript to a peer review journal, right? It's like 70% of you guys. And many of you guys take it to have 3 publications. I think it's kind of standard to have 3 publications during your PhD, like 1 year each or something like that. So very good motivation here, as I can see. So most of you guys are familiar with Simago, right? I think one of the reasons is that it is free and it's widely used by a lot of universities around the world. ABDC is more Australian and New Zealand based, and ABS is more European based, and JCR it is good, but we need to pay for that, unfortunately, to access the journal quality. So it is unsurprising that Simago is the most familiar system with you guys. Basically, all of them are pretty much the same. There's some discrepancies, but as long as you're familiar with one of them, then it's going to be totally fine. Okay, so well, obligation, as Professor Eco just mentioned in the opening speech, PhD students are kind of obligated to publish something, right, during the PhD to graduate. So you can see the obligation is the biggest motivation in here. Knowledge, money, of course, we all driven by money, right? We are economists, we know that. Reputation, money, yeah, support career again is also kind of money, right? For portfolios, yeah. So at least I can see some incentives in here. You guys know that you need to publish, you need to have some publications to graduate, and you need to have some publications to get a good job, to earn a good living, and to climb your career ladder, support your career, right? Yeah, that's good. So I kind of understand a little bit more about my audience today. Thank you very much for the input. So let's go back to what I have prepared for today. What's that? Yeah. So in the survey, well, when I ask you your motivation to publish, it kind of answer this question: why publication, right? So the traditional question is the traditional thesis sufficient for PhD? As far as I know, a lot of universities, including the University of Western Australia at the moment, only require PhD students to have a thesis to graduate. Even UWA at the moment doesn't require PhD students to publish anything during the PhD, and they're still eligible to graduate, right? So the answer is simply yes. Well, to get your PhD, well, the thesis is enough. But there are a lot of reasons why you are motivated to publish during your PhD. So if you have a published paper, at least in a decent journal, I'm not talking about some predator journals out there. There are a lot of them, but it must be in a decent journal. It means that your works are already reviewed by peers. In other words, they are other researchers, right? Some may argue that PhD thesis is also marked by examiners, which is also equivalent to peer reviewing, right? Someone marked your thesis and it's similar to someone else review your papers, right? But usually good journals invite top researcher in the field. So papers published in these journals usually have higher standards and higher quality. So that's why when people look at the CV, they usually care more about publication rather than thesis. In my experience, I talked to several other PhD graduates as well. Publication will make your PhD journey less risky. Less risky in the sense that when you send the PhD thesis to the PhD examiners for them to examine, if they can say that, well, the PhD chapter have been published before, or at least in the revise and resubmit stage of a good journal, they will be more lenient to your work. Otherwise, they will be very harsh, right? So it would be less risky because you got the paper published already, and the examiners don't have too much to talk about or to ask you to revise the paper or the thesis anymore. So it means that you don't have to spend too much time on the thesis, and you save a lot of time because you know the examination, PhD thesis examination is very lengthy. It can take maybe 6 months or years, and if some examiners ask you to significantly revise the thesis and send the thesis back for them to re-examine, it will be a nightmare because it will cost you maybe either 6 months or maybe 1 year. And basically, you couldn't do anything during that time, just the thesis, right? So getting a publication before submitting a thesis would make your PhD graduation less risky and, of course, shorter. And in terms of motivation, I can say that some of you guys say, well, it's good for your career, right? And it's true. So maybe some of you guys here are in like more a senior position than me, like the top leader of the university or faculty, like Professor Iko, for example. So you may be maybe you know more than me, but my impression is that when employers look for an academic candidate, they usually look at the track record, which is basically a publication list, right? So they don't really care too much about thesis. Maybe you can list what was your thesis, what your thesis title is, what you work on, but what was your achievement during your PhD journal. So they are publication, right? So publication can be considered as achievement during your PhD. And if you have a decent list of publication, then you get a better chance compared to other candidates. And of course, obligation here and quantity and quality of publications are part of KPI, right? Higher quantity or higher quality, both means you get higher performance. It is good for career and also for your salary as well, right? So it kind of aligns with your obligation, your motivation that you expressed in my survey question. And the other the other thing is the impact you may have to the academia or other researchers. So when other researchers review the literature, they usually read the published papers only. I don't know how many people care about thesis, but most of the time when I look at the reference list of a paper, they are published papers. They are not PhD thesis, right? You guys already also have some publication experience, so you also can see that. So it means that if you get a published paper, there will more chance for you guys to have a higher impact for other researchers. For example, the higher number of citations, right? And your name is known by other researchers as well, because they cite your work, right? And of course, there are a lot of other opportunities because of that. So what makes a good academic paper? A lot of things, but based on my experience, is the contribution. Okay, so maybe you guys can disagree with me, because everything I'm sharing today is just my personal experience and my personal opinion. It may be true, it may be not true. It may work for me, but it may not work for others. So, but anyway, I'm still sharing my experience. So hopefully it will be useful for some of you guys, or maybe all of you guys, because we can learn from each other. So contribution is usually considered the most important aspect of an academic paper. So how your paper contribute to the academic knowledge. So when reading your paper, what do I know? What do I learn from it? On top of what have been documented or what have been found previously. So that is the contribution. And to make a good contribution, the first thing is that you need to have a good research question or research ideas. And the second thing I think is also important is the data that are suitable to answer the questions. Sometimes you can ask very interesting question, but you don't have any data at all or any means to answer that questions, then it's not a paper. So you need to ask the question and you need to solve the question yourself within the paper. So it's like the two part of the paper, and also two part that make your paper a good paper by contributing to knowledge. And of course, there could be other factors like theoretical foundation, methodological rigor, structure and flow writing, and of course, we cannot ignore the other factor, that is luck, right? Sometimes we just lucky to get into a very good journal, but I think in the long term, our contribution is the most important one. So let's go back to the ideas, because I think ideas are always the starting point of any research project or any paper. So how to get a good one? During my PhD, I think I wrote around 15 papers or something like that. I can't remember exactly. So where did I get the ideas? The first thing, the traditional way is the academic from other academic papers. As I said before, contribution is something you found which has not been documented in the literature before. So the necessary condition is that you need to understand the literature. So if you, from the scratch, if you don't know anything about the literature, you just started your PhD or master by research journey, and you don't know much about research other than something in the standard textbook. So where do you start? Where can we start, right? I assume in here that you already know what you want to work on, because sometimes finding what you want to know to work on is also a very difficult process, because you learn a lot of things during your bachelor, for example, in economics, finance, accounting, management accounting, financial accounting, financial analysis, and it's like you have a lot of things to consider, and you don't know exactly what you want to do, right? But I cannot tell like how to know what we want to do because it's just a personal interest, right? You chose to do your PhD, you chose to do your master by research because you're interested in learning more about something, and it is your job to identify the area of interest you want to study. And starting from that point, just look on the Google Scholar. If you don't want to, if you don't know how to start, if you assuming that you already know what you want to work on, you just start with some related keywords, right? And identify some most impactful papers based on journal ranking, number of citations, authors, and read them very carefully. Or maybe the better way is talk to your supervisors or talk to your peers or your academic advisors who share the same research interest and they who knows more about the literature than you do, and they can share the papers with you. They can tell you this is a groundbreaking papers in the area, and you need to comprehensively understand those papers. So it would shorten the journey for you. You don't have to find them yourself, and you still get the papers to read. So my advice is to read several impactful papers, the groundbreaking papers in the area, and understand them comprehensively. And during this, when reading those papers, there's a couple of questions or a couple of things you need to consider. You need to extract from those papers what are the research questions, like how the paper fills the research gap. So what have been done in the previous researches that are cited in the introduction literature review. So it's like you're tracing back the previous literature. So it means that if you are reading a 2010 paper, so you basically you are trying to understand what have been done before 2010 until that paper is published, right? And so by that way, you can identify several key papers, some groundbreaking methodological paper that is related to your research interest, and you're gonna save a lot of time because that by reading only impactful papers, you don't need to spend time to read some lower rank journal paper because the contribution in those papers are not very big, and given your limited time during the PhD, I don't think it's worth it. So my recommendation is just read some groundbreaking papers only. And what data did they use? Data is very important. I'll go back to that later. But maybe you guys are doing accounting research. It could be a little bit different because I'm doing mostly finance research. So maybe the data you guys are using are different from the data I'm using. But yeah, I think nowadays that data are the most one of the key important factor that make a good paper. So try to understand or take a note what data that paper use and whether you able to have access to that database or not, or how, or if possible, do you know someone that who have access to that database, for example? Because good papers usually use very good database, and if you also have access to that database, it also very promising because you have access to the same resource as other good researchers, right? And also methodology. What methodology those papers are using? If I don't know much about accounting journals, but if in finance journal, methodologies are pretty simple. Most of them are just basic econometrics. So maybe if you can totally understand the methodology, it is good because you can basically replicate what they have done before in some like top journal, right? And the results, and my experience is that usually I just look at the baseline results. if I want to go back further to read the paper more carefully, I will read some robustness test or additional analysis or something like that. But to me, baseline results are the most important to understand what the paper is talking about. And the most important things are lying in the introduction and literature review already. So they already told you what they found, what the literature has been done, and what they will do in the further analysis. So it is not really worth it to look into all the results in very details. So after reviewing all those papers, maybe it's time for you guys to think about what you want, what you will do. You need to identify the research gap after you have some idea about the big picture. So maybe you can say it is easier said than done, right? Because even if you read a lot of papers, you still don't know what the research gap is. And I was like that before, and I'm still like that at the moment. Because sometimes we know the literature and we cannot identify the gap. It's like we look at the very big picture. There's several, the big puzzle, there's several holes in there, but we cannot identify them because they are simply too small, right? And we are not sharp enough. It takes time. It takes a lot of time, quite a lot of time actually. So be patient during this stage, reading and summarizing and generating idea. Think about the literature. In my experience during my PhD, I had quite a lot of papers, but most of them are produced during my third year and fourth year. During the first year, I didn't have anything. I have nothing during the first year because most of the time I just spend most of the time on reading and trying to understand what have been done and trying to understand the literature, trying to understand the methodology and so on. So I didn't produce anything during I think my first year or even first year and a half. So be patient during the early stage of your PhD. Don't feel too stressed if you are at the end of the first year and you couldn't do anything or didn't have any paper at all. It's normal. It's totally normal. Because you are at the stage of collecting knowledge, of understanding the literature, and learning how to do the research. So just think about PhD as the training process where you learn how to do research. So expect to have some publication during the third year or fourth year, but not the first year and the second year, because you are still very new in the area and you're still learning. And because you are learning when, well, you don't know what to do, right? So you need to sort it out yourself and you need to try it and error and try and error. So well, don't expect to see some achievement during the early stage of the PhD because of that. So this is one example how I generated the idea for one of my paper in Journal of Financial Markets, one of the A-star journal in the IBDC ranking system. I think it took me around 2.5 years to get this paper published. But my the idea when I came up with the idea for this paper is pretty simple. I read a couple of papers in the area, including this one, this one. Maybe you guys are in accounting, so they are unfamiliar with you. But basically, as you can see in this diagram, this paper, Plain et al. 2017, look at the interaction between insiders and insiders in companies, right? And the other paper before that look at the interaction, the trading interaction between short sellers and insiders. So all of those papers talk about informed traders quite a lot, and you know that insiders and short sellers are somehow informed, right? Especially insiders. And this guy, institutional investor. haven't been talked about in any of those papers. So we know that insiders, short sellers, and institutional investors are, in general, are informed traders, right? So I simply ask myself the question that, well, what about the interaction between insiders and institutional investors? So if that is the time the very first stage of the paper where I generated the idea. So it's just a simple question, right? A and B, which have not been done before. So why don't I look at it, right? So the first question is very simple like that. But of course, you need to do a lot more to develop it, to look into the literature and etc. to see whether the interaction makes sense. Is there any theoretical background that support the relation between A and B, for example, support your research question? And another thing is that whether you have the data to answer the questions. Okay, I was lucky to have that kind of data, so that's why I was able to execute my research question, right? So a lot of things need to be considered, but in the very first stage of generating idea, just read and ask yourself whether these questions have been answered before. If you're not sure, go back to the literature. Google Scholar, for example, it's pretty easy to search, right? So if it has not been executed before, then you have a good chance to do that, right? And you think about the data later. Another way I generated ideas from some anecdotal evidence. Sometimes I read newspapers, I read some websites, some blogs, and someone claimed that A is related to B, but no one has systematically shown or analyzed it. Like the journalists, for example, they claim that there's something A, for example, is related to B, but because they are journalists, they are not academics, so they don't know how to analyze them systematically, right? For example, one of the paper I published in Journal Banking and Finance, another is Science Journal. Actually, the idea is generated from this very short blog post or website or something like that. Are you still seeing my screen? Yeah, I guess so.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see that, well, it is very short, right? So I look at the Bitcoin exchange reserves. Maybe you guys are not familiar with that. So let's just look at the length of the post and this one. So the author claimed a relationship between the reserve and price using the two series in here. Okay. And with learning econometrics, we know that, well, price series are non-stationary. So it tells us nothing by comparing two non-stationary time series. So I asked myself, well, they claim that, but whether it is true or not. Then I go back, collect the data, analyze the data more systematically in a more correct way, and develop the research project from there. Because this simple question has not been answered before. It just popped out in here in just one, like, very short website post like this. Okay, so that was the way I generated the idea from for my research, both from academic papers and also anecdotal evidence. So that's why reading newspapers, economics newspapers are quite useful, because you can have some updated idea about what is going on, and also sometimes it gives you some fresh ideas about academic publication, because usually academic publications are lacked compared to what actually happened in the business world, because you know that it takes a lot of time to get a paper published, right? While reading newspapers can give you some very fresh idea about what's going on, and you may have some research idea from that. So to sum up, well, you can see it's just loop, read, and then generate the questions, ideas. And if you have some ideas or questions, go back to search whether it has been done before, read more, and then come up with and then refine the questions and so on. So how to jump in the circle as a fresh PhD student? You just started your first year and you don't know what to do, right? So my answer is that, well, whenever you started, as long as you start, you jump into the circle. You can start by reading first and then ask the question later, or maybe you already have some questions in your mind, but you need to go back and read to build some theoretical background about the question, to confirm that the question has not been done before by other researchers, right? And then you go back to refine the questions. Okay, so you can start either way, right? Read and then generate ideas, which is more traditional. But the other way around, ideas and read sometimes also work. Because maybe you are very creative, you have 100 research questions in your mind, right? And you simply go back to check any of them has been done before by reading. And by reading, you may say that, well, some questions are invalid because they are not supported by theoretical background, something like that, right? So you can refine the research question, and then you can find the most interesting one and the one that you want to pursue further. So I love analogy. Usually I use analogy a lot during my lecture and also in my paper. So you can think about the process as the four-stroke engine. You know that, right? So there are four phases: intake, compression, power, and exhaust. So for the first phase, you just read as much as you can about the interested topic, right? So it's like you are building your own background, your own knowledge about that specific area. And in the compression phase, then you identify the research gaps, given that you know the literature and you know what have been done before. But always you have to go back to the first phase, right? It's not a perfect analogy at all because you need to go back and forth to check with the literature, right? During these two phases. And then the power phase is where you execute the ideas, collect the data, run the model, then write a paper. And the exhaust phase is the phase where you present your work in the conference, you submit the journal, or you incorporate the feedback from the conference presentations, or any journal, or any rejection from the journals, or any review reports from the reviewers from the journal, right? So let's go back to another problem, that is data. The idea is something you can control, right? You can read and then generate the idea yourself and go back to read and refine the idea. But the data is something you're unable to control totally, right? To me, it is one of the most important challenges because sometimes I have some research question, but I have no idea where and how to get the data, whether the data even exists out there, or if exists, whether they need to be hand collected, whether I need to survey someone to get the data, whether I need to go to the website and scrub the web, or I need to purchase the data from the data provider because someone already collected them and selling them on the market. If the data need to be purchased, sometimes it can be, and most of the time, data can be very expensive. So what we can do? Well, there are several approaches. The first thing is the university needs to make the move because it is very expensive and we cannot pay for the database ourselves, right? So the university needs to spend some resources. If they want to be a research intensive institution, they need to spend some money on research. And data is one important. It's like the ingredient, the food for the ingredient for the dish, right? Without the ingredients, you cannot make good dish, even if you're a very good chef. If you are a very good chef, like analogous to a good researcher, but you don't have a good ingredients, which is data, then you can't do anything, right? So data is very important, and universities need to make the move because of that. From the perspective of a staff or a PhD student, then one way to work around is to collaborate with other researchers from bigger or richer university. I find it work for like quite well for me because UWA is not a rich university actually, honestly, unfortunately for me. So sometimes I need to find someone from bigger university who have access to some specific database that I need and invite them to work with me as a co-author, right? I think for university in developing countries, like Indonesia, I come from Vietnam. I work as a lecturer in Vietnam for several years. So I also sort of know the system in developing countries. We have very limited resources. So I think that collaboration with other researchers from bigger university would be good. We can learn from them, and also we can use the resources from them. Right? What we have is human resources. We don't have money, so what we can contribute is human resources, and they can contribute money. Right? It's like the win-win solution, right? And it works for me quite well. But the problem is that we need a good idea of how the data can be used before approaching them. So that's why I mentioned previously, when you read a paper, you need to understand the database, right? Usually they describe the database very carefully, especially in good journals. So by just by reading the papers, you know what is out there in the database, what the data provides to users, and you can think of how to use the data, and you know that well, some through your networks, through your connections, some university have subscription to that database, then you can contact them. Like we are academics, and we love to collaborate, right? And I think like 70% of the time I wrote to someone to ask for data or collaboration. If I have some good idea, even like very preliminary idea or questions, they are very happy to assist, because from their point of view, there's nothing to lose, right? They didn't have to pay for the database, the university paid, right? But if they can use the database and collaborate with other people from other university, then it is win-win solution for them. They just provide the data, provide some guidance, and we're gonna do the rest. Of course, they will contribute in the later stage, but at least we can have the ingredients to cook our food, right? What else can we do? I don't know whether it works for accounting researchers, but for me as a finance researcher, learning a programming language would be extremely useful in terms of data collection. The reason is that we are living in the big data era. If you compare the kind of data academic papers use today with the data they used like 30 years ago, you can see big difference, very big difference in terms of data size, right? So if we don't know a programming language, we just use some very basic thing like Excel or something like SPSS, for example, we cannot work with big data. That was my experience. So a programming language would be very helpful in that way. And another interesting thing is that a lot of data are freely available. They are just unstructured. For example, the Twitter discussion, Reddit discussion, something like that about the company, the financial discussion, for example. They're unstructured data because they just text, right? They just post or comments from someone. And only using a programming language can help us to collect those data. They are free, of course, because they are publicly available on the internet. But if we have the skills or programming skills to collect those data, they're gonna be very unique, and we can make use utilize the data quite a lot. For example, like from the web scraping, mass data download API, something like that. So I think in my PhD chapter, I mostly just download data freely from the internet, not the traditional way of downloading by clicking the download button. I just grab the data from here and there and then combine them together. I'll show you an example later. And even if you don't want to work in academia after your PhD, data or programming skills are still highly valued by practitioners. When I work at Monash University, my job was working with industry partners. And I talked to many of them, and they really value people with good data or programming skills, because they can process data, they can analyze data very quickly, combining with their finance or accounting or economic knowledge, then it will be very good, right? They can collect data and analyze the data and write a report very quickly, right? So they are the practitioners also value data skills, even if you don't want to work in academia. So when we study economics, people usually say we should think about an economist, right? But as a researcher, I think we need to think like an economist and also organize as a programmer. Because I find that, well, when writing a research paper, a good programming skill helps a lot, because we organize everything in a very systematic way. And you know that when we have to revise the paper, you need to go back from almost the beginning, right? And a good organization skills will help us to save a lot of time. Let me give you an example in here by how I save some money and time because of some programming skills. So basically, this website give us the data on the cryptocurrency prices, which I used in my PhD thesis. And when I contacted the website, I think 3 or 4 years ago, something like that, for all the data like this, basically I want to get the data in here, the date and also the price and the transaction volume, the 24-hour transaction volume. They asked me for $500 US dollar for just that database. Well, honestly, because I was very poor at that time, I'm still poor at the moment, honestly. But I was poor at that time. I didn't have any money, so I go back and look at the website, and I see, well, the data is here. You can see that, right? We have the date, we have the price, and we have the volume. So I thought, well, there must be a way to scrap the data from the website. It's not just like look, move one by one like this and copy and paste into the Excel. It doesn't work. It didn't work. It will be very time consuming. And I went back to my desk and came up with something like this. It's like 40 lines of code, and it can help me download all the data in just, I think, 30 seconds. And more because I can download data, price data from many other cryptocurrencies as well, not just that one. Okay, so this one saved me quite a lot of money, but unfortunately, at the moment, the website already knows that some people can scrap the data from the website, so they shut the API. So this one basically doesn't work anymore. Because, well, they know that they can make money because of that, and people have some way to work around, so they patch the error, and unfortunately I'm unable to do that anymore. But This example is just to tell you that sometimes we can save some money because of our skills. We can basically get the data which is publicly available. We don't need to buy. Programming skills can help with data analysis. If you look at a typical research project in my folder, you will see something like this. This one is I just captured the screenshot from one of my research projects. Usually I sort them like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each file in here contains the analysis for one particular aspect of the research project. And when I go back to revise the paper, I just click on this one and run the code from the first line to the last line, and then I will basically replicate exactly what I have written in the paper. Why it is useful? So because you have some experience about publishing, right? So sometimes you wrote the paper, you finish the paper, you send it off to the journal, and it took the journal maybe, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 6 months to get the reviewer's report, right? And by the time you get the reviewer reports, well, basically, you almost have no idea what you have done before in the paper. It's like your mind was totally fresh at that time, and you need to go back to your desk and read the paper again, revise the paper, and these things will be very helpful because in there, basically, it tells you what you have done before. You wrote some note in there, how you execute each data analysis step, what are the results, how you export the result, and etc. So you don't, basically, I try to avoid time-consuming copy and paste. So the computer will work for me. Like I just run the code in here and the data will be extracted into another file, right? So by that way, I can exactly replicate what I had done before, even after 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. So it helped a lot of time because previously when I also had some experience before PhD, research experience before my PhD, I copy and paste quite a lot. And when I revised my paper, sometimes I have no idea how I came up with the number, right? And that's why some documents like this will help a lot. If you use data, it will have some something like this, like in the do file, right? I don't know about SPSS or eViews because I don't use them. But try to organize as a programmer, and you will find that it will be extremely useful, especially when you have to manage multiple projects at the same time. And in terms of methodology, my experience is that, well, the simpler, the better. OLS, ordinary least square, or sometimes ANOVA, a simple analysis is always our good friend. The reason is that when the reviewers, for example, read our paper, they are more appealing to something easier to understand and easier to follow. You don't want to bother them with a lot of equations and some complicated methodologies and etc. And then they totally get lost, right? So if you want to communicate with them effectively, then the simpler the better. So in terms of methodology, I think that is only my recommendation. In terms of writing, I don't have too much to talk about in this area because I'm a terrible writer, honestly. I'm still learning how to write, actually. And I found that this document is extremely useful for PhD student, written by Professor Cochrane like 20 years ago. But they're very, very useful. And a lot of PhD programs in top universities still using this one nowadays as training documents for the PhD student in terms of writing. Okay, because we are not native speakers, we have a lot of disadvantage compared to other native speakers. So we need to also spend a lot of more times compared to them in terms of writing. So my recommendation is to read more and more papers from top tier journals and try to copy their writing style. Okay. Do not write like you do in IELTS. I made that terrible mistake when I started my PhD, and my PhD supervisor complained about my writing a lot. So you need to write very concisely, very briefly, but in IELTS, we need to expand our writings as long as possible using some words we hardly use or only saw them 4 times in our life, something like that, right? But in academic writing, we need to be very concise, very brief, and try to make our paper easy to understand as possible. So that is only my my tips in here. How much time do I have left?
You still have 20 minutes.
Okay. I think I can finish within the time.
Okay.
I thought I should have finished much earlier, but opportunity is quite long. In terms of journal submission, I know that you guys have some journal submission experience before based on the survey, right? But what I'm trying to say here is that you need to identify a good fit from the beginning, right? If you know you need to estimate, roughly estimate the quality of your paper and identify the good fit from the beginning. You can't aim too high, because aiming too high will cost you a lot of things. Time, the cost, because the submission process, the reviewing process is very time consuming, right? And aiming too low is kind of waste of your effort. You spend a lot of time writing a good paper. You don't want it to end up in a low ranked journal, right? So identify a good fit is very important. If you don't have the time constraint, then the strategy would be different. But I assume that because you are obligated to publish during your PhD, so identify a good fit is very important in here, right? If you don't have the time constraint, just go with the very good one, get the good feedback from the reviewers, even if it is a rejection, then you still can develop the paper further and submit to a better journal. But if you are restricted by time, then you need to estimate the quality of your paper and send to a good fit journal, right? The first thing you do is to look at the reference list. So what journal did you cite the most? Because as an editor, I talked to several editors and they kind of love to see their journals cited in the reference list. So it's kind of making a good impression to the journal editor already when you have a lot of papers in his or her journal cited in the reference list. Okay, you look at the journal scope, because you don't want to send an accounting paper to a purely finance journal. It will get rejected straight away, right? Because it's out of scope. Journal ranking, of course, if you are obligated to have some publication of some certain ranking, then you need to consider that, right? But the general rule is that higher the better, but you need to also consider the quality of the paper as well. Submission fee, some are free, but some are very expensive. Accounting journal are usually more reasonable, cheaper, much cheaper. Sometimes are even free. But if you look at the finance journal, they are, well, I don't know why they have that kind of pricing model, but they are very, very expensive sometimes. But the good news is, as far as I know, is that some good journals waive the submission fee for researchers from developing countries. So if I submit a paper, I need to pay a lot. But if you are submit a paper, like you have Indonesian institution as affiliation, you don't have to pay anything. I know that some journal have some good policy like that. But anyway, you are in accounting, so you may know more about accounting journals than I do. So it is your call to identify the good fit. So this is a process. Let me skip it because you're already familiar with things like that. So when you send a paper to a journal, don't expect too much. Expect a rejection always. So because rejections are simply the normal part of the process. So don't take it personally. You may want to learn from the rejection by incorporating some instructive comment. But if you're lucky enough to get an INR, revise and resubmit, then you don't need to follow all the requests, right? You understand the paper the most. Because I work a lot of time as a reviewer as well, and because the reviewers are pretty busy, they only spend very limited time reading your paper, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe 1 day maximum, right? But you already spend like years on the paper, so you understand your paper the most, right? So only follow the comments and the requests that you think are reasonable. Okay. And no need to stress. Don't take it personally. It's just a part of the job. Or if you consider it as a game, then if the game's over, just replay, send it to another journal. Of course, there's some sort of stress in here because of obligation. You are obligated to publish something. So there's a little bit of stress in here, but my point is that, well, there are multiple journals out there. If you're unsuccessful with this one, just go for the other one. Then you get you will be more lucky in that. Which is highlight my last point in here. It's important to have multiple projects in the pipeline. Because when you kind of get rejected with one paper, you still have something else to work on. It's like your motivation. If you have only one paper, you get rejected, then you don't know what to do, right? It's like the whole world collapsed. But if you have 3 or 4 projects at the same time, then you still have something else. You still have some other hopes, right? And you never know which one gives you more luck, right? You have 4 papers for projects, and maybe 2 of them get published, and 2 of them will end up in the trash. That's right. That's all right, right? Don't put all the eggs in one basket. Okay. But the problem is that how to handle multiple projects at the same time. That is another challenge. Okay. So I just share with you some rejection I got so previously from the Journal of Financial Market, the paper about Bitcoin I shared with you before. And you can see in here, the main reason for the rejection is the contribution, right? Can make a meaningful contribution, something like that. So they rejected my paper simply because the paper didn't make enough contribution to the field based on the reviewers report and also the editor's opinion as well. There's some good thing in here. Data source is quite novel, but basically in the paper I just present something which has been done before in the stock market but applied to the Bitcoin market. So it's something like in the traditional way, something have done in the US market, for example, and you bring that model to Indonesia, like using Indonesian data, then it kind of analogous to something like that. So the editor said that the paper doesn't help readers to understand anything further in terms of knowledge. Okay. So there's a couple of comments in here which I like. Load a gun, much more likely to have intent to shoot. So, but my paper has something to do with that. I like analogy, as I told you before. So I just incorporate that analogy in the revised version, and end up with this paper, use the gun analogy. So you can see that I changed the title. The title sometimes is very important because it can, a catchy title will make a good impression for reviewers and editors. Okay, so you can see that I changed the title from loaded for bear. Loaded for bear simply means we load the gun and to prepare for the bear, for something coming, something bad that might come in the future, right? And it sounds more appealing, right, and more catchy. But I think that. And I also emphasize the structural difference of Bitcoin blockchain that does not exist in stock market. So I modify the contribution. I try to make the contribution stronger because I say that, well, what have been done before? Well, it's okay. It's about stock market, but Bitcoin blockchain or Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are totally different. The structures are very different. So that's why our study is unique. And finally, the paper got accepted in JBF, Journal Banking and Finance, which is also a star journal. But as I said before, the paper is your baby, right? You understand it the most. So if you find editors or reviewers comment irrelevant, do not bother and move on for the rejection. But if it is the R&R, then you need to find a way to reconcile. And that is the most difficult part, as you can see in here. To me, this is the most difficult part because of a number of reasons. Well, reviewers can be very critical. So they usually criticize the contribution. So they say that, well, the contribution is not enough. You need to do more or discuss more to make the contribution clearer and better, something like that. And it's very qualitative, right? Qualitative in the sense that, well, it's very hard to write a groundbreaking paper nowadays, right? So the contribution almost all the time is very marginal. So it's just like our writing skills, whether we can convince them that our contribution is big enough. And sometimes the reviewers can ask to do something that we unable to do. It's the nightmare. Or we're able to do, but the results are against what we claimed in the previous version of the paper. Then it will be very difficult in those scenarios. And we need to find a way to reconcile the two conflicting results and even sometimes two conflicting reviewers. So dealing with reviewers are very tricky part. I don't think I have enough time to talk about that too much today, but I will share with you something like this. Maybe you came up with some photo like this before. So from the version you submitted to journal to the actual publication, after addressing the reviewer's comment, you can see that they are totally two different versions, right? Go through the comments very carefully several times. Usually when I receive the reviewer reports, my first thought is that, wow, what the heck is this? How can I address them? So there are two common questions I asked myself when I first read the reviewer's report. But usually I just leave it there for several days or several weeks, maybe several days. Several weeks are too much. Don't have that much time. Several days later, when my mind was fresher, and go back and read the paper again, read the reviewers again. And what I tried to do is to try to understand why the reviewers came up with the comments. Okay, because when we wrote the paper because we know everything, right? We know the data, we know the analysis, we know the results, we know the literature. But sometimes the reviewers just read the paper very quickly, and they didn't spend too much time trying to understand comprehensively what our paper is about. So they came up with some very naive questions. So it is our job to explain. right? It's totally not their fault. It's our fault because we are trying to sell our papers, right? It also our fault to make reviewers misunderstood the manuscript. So when we write, we need to think about like if an outsider read the paper, whether they understand that or not. Or we need to structure the paper in the way that, well, if someone skim our paper for 10 minutes, they can understand what basically like 50 or 60% of what is talking about. Then you're gonna get a good revision. Okay. If sometimes you get stuck, my recommendation is just leave it there, work on something else, and come back later when your mind is fresher. Because you don't want to stuck with something for too long, and it will get just worse if you stuck with it for too long. So my recommendation is just leave it there and work on something totally different. So that's why I said before that having multiple projects at the same time is quite helpful, because you may have something else to work on, forget about the problem for a while, and maybe when your mind is fresher, you go back and you can come up with some idea to address the comment. When you wrote the response, try to be very polite, right? As I said before, it's always our fault to make the reviewers misunderstood the manuscript. And the reviewers actually voluntarily spend time reading our papers. They didn't get any remuneration or something like that at all. So their effort must be appreciated regardless of how they wrote the report. So don't take any negative comments personally. Try to respond as polite as possible, right? And be specific. You need to explain every single question in the reviewer's report. Okay. Respond to each comment one by one and as clearly as possible. And probably you need to leave the report there for a while and then go back and revise it, and then go back and revise it several times until you're satisfied. Satisfied mean that, well, if you assume that you are reviewers, you're asking this question and you read the answer, you're satisfied with that answer. That answer like address all the concern and all the comments. Even if you're unable to do the analysis, you need to explain why and in a very polite words. And sometimes reviewers are quite easygoing. If we're lucky, and they can, if we explain clearly enough, that's why we cannot do this, or why you don't agree with this, you don't want to do this, something like that, then they will, yeah, they're happy with our response. So be polite is one of the most important things. And the last point in here is that try to avoid opening a new can of worms. Just do what you're asked to do, right? You don't raise another issue, or you don't argue with the reviewers by referring to something else which is not in your paper, something like that. So you be specific and do what the reviewer asks you to do. So my last point in here is the time management as PhD student. I'm pretty terrible at time management, honestly. So I don't think I have too much to share in here. But based on my experience as PhD student, no one actually told me exactly what to do. I don't know about the system in your institution, but supervisor in Australia are it's not they're not the boss. They just give you the advice, and sometimes they work with you in some research project. They don't tell you exactly what to do, and because of that, and even they don't supervise you very closely. They don't track like how many days you be present in the university, how many hours you work within the day, or something like that. So you work on your own space. It means that you need to be very self-disciplined. by setting a timetable and strictly adhere to this. You don't say that, well, if I don't finish the text this week, I can do it next week, because no one asked, give me a specific deadline, something like that. You cannot tell that to yourself. You need to set the deadline for yourself and adhere to this. Of course, there's some flexibility because we are postgraduate students and we may have some other commitment, like family commitment or something like that. But basically, you need to follow the timetable as strictly as possible. Let's say you decided to dedicate 40 hours per week for your PhD, so you have to do that. If during the weekdays, like 5 days from Monday to Friday, you just work like 20 days, so it means that you need to use your whole weekend to cover your work. Right? And break down into small tasks. You think about research project as the very lengthy and long project, right? And you cannot finish within just 1 or 2 months. You need to do it step by step, right? So let's just break down the project into some small tasks that are more achievable. Let's say you say, today I'm gonna read 3 papers. Okay, tomorrow I'm gonna write the summary of those 3 papers, and the day after I'm gonna read another 3 papers that are cited by those 3 papers, something like that. And for example, when during the data collection process, right? Today I'm trying to analyze or collect the data from 100 respondents, right? Something like that. So basically, you try to break the text into very small one, and it will be more achievable. And over time, it will build up and very helpful to your very big project. The fourth point may work for me, but I don't think it works for everyone, because sometimes I think about the research project when relaxing. For example, when I have a coffee on my own, or take a shower, or walking in the park or something like that. I know that it sounds quite nerdy, but to me, these times are the time when I'm most creative. The creative means that I can think about new idea, think about new way to respond to the reports, think about a new way to analyze the data, or even think about a new way to write the code. Like, so it works for me quite well, because when I'm relaxed, I'm more creative. Maybe you can try this if you think it is helpful. It's your call anyway. As I said before, having multiple projects at the same time also help. If stuck with one, switch to the other and come back later with fresher mind. So the last point I want to say here is that when I started my PhD, I told myself that, well, I'm not smarter than others, so the only way to compete with them on the job market is to work harder. So I heard people say, well, don't work harder, work smarter. But I think that only when you work harder, you can find a way to work smarter. Okay, so that's all I can share formally today. Of course, we can still have Q&A and for informal chat later on, but that's all end of my presentation. Thank you. And if you have any questions or comments or anything you want to discuss further, feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lei. Thank you for manage your time very well.
Yeah.
And now we come to the Q&A sessions. I would like to give the first opportunity for those who want to ask the question directly to the speaker. You can push the raise hand button, and then I will pick some of the question from you.
Poppy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, please, yeah. Halo. Sepertinya freeze dia. Bu Kiki,
Yes,
mungkin
I
bisa
think,
komunikasi ya.
yeah, okay.
Ya,
Lai, are you still there? I think you got freezed up.
mungkin di WA ya Bu Kiki.
Okay.
Kayaknya keluar ini.
I have already sent him a WhatsApp message, but only tick one. So I'm not
Oke.
sure it's delivered.
It must be a connection issue.
Yeah. Let me check on Teams with him.
Oke.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michael.
Halo. Hmm.
We cannot hear you, Lai.
Oh, he's still joining.
Yes.
But yeah. Well, while waiting for Dr. Lei joining again, please, if you want to ask directly to the speaker, you can start to raising your hand by pushing the raise hand button now. Hmm? Oh, yeah. 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 Lays out now, Bu Kiki. Ya, mental lagi nih. Koneksinya kayaknya ya.
I think it's the internet connection problem.
Ya. Yeah, I think so, Bu Kiki. But thanks God, at least he finished his talk. Belum. Okay, while waiting for the speaker reconnect, if you have some like experience to share, so feel free. Maybe we can start with Prof. Eko Suyono. I think he's a good researcher and has many publications. Do you have any experience to share, Prof?
No, but I think it is the capacity of Dr. Lang, Ustad. Maybe Ustad Poppy forgot to pray before, so we are in trouble. Just wait a moment.
Yeah.
I also cannot contact his WhatsApp number.
Oh.
Yeah.
Should we make decision for this situation?
Yeah, I think we can collect the questions from the
Okay, all right.
participants if there are any, and then after that we can deliver it to Dr. Lai to respond, giving a written response if possible, so that our participants still can get
the feedback
questions
response.
delivered. Yeah.
Okay. So should I end the session, Bu Kiki, now?
Do you mind to wait like probably another 10 minutes?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Bu Poppy, I'm very interested in the Mona Lisa image. It's very
Yeah. That's interesting, ya, Bu.
yeah. And I see that sometimes revision from the reviewers
Yeah.
is can change our perspective of the articles, I think. Very funny.
That's really describe what happened, ya, Bu, in the real.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
It's not Mona Lisa again.
Sorry, I'm back.
Thanks God.
Yeah, hope that you have a good 5-minute break.
Yeah, that's good.
Sorry, my internet connection was unstable, so I just switched to 4G at the moment. Hopefully it works.
Yeah. Going online is sometimes we got this kind of problem, right? Unpredictable. Yeah. Okay. I would like to start with the first question in the chat box from Christina, Professor Christina. He's the head of PhD program.
Yeah.
Well, during the preparing this webinar, we heard a lot from Kiki about you, and what was amazed us is that she said you produced 15 papers during your PhD study, 3.5 years. I don't have any, what is it like? I don't know how you manage your time. Did you really spend your time for sleep and for leisure? I don't know if you how you balance your life and your study life. And one of the question from Bu Christina is that how long does it take to prepare one paper? Oh, I think, Lei, are you with me? Freeze lagi.
Yeah, thanks, Poppy, and thanks,
Yeah.
Professor Christina.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay.
I need to move to other room because the connection is not very strong.
Yeah, I think so.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Lai, I think it's better to turn off your video. Maybe it will help to boost the bandwidth.
Yeah. That's a very good idea. So you guys don't need to see my face anyway, right?
Yeah. That's good point.
Yeah, so when just a clarification, when I said 15 papers, they're not published papers. They include publications and working papers. So yeah.
Aduh, hilang lagi.
Publication by graduated, I only had like 7 or 8. The remaining were the working paper. But in terms of time management, I think well, I hardly recall what I did during my PhD in terms of time, but I think I didn't work more than 40 hours per week, maybe maximum 45 or something like that, only. So because my time frame wasn't, my working time wasn't normal because I had a daughter at that time and my wife was working. So I had to look after her during morning. So most of the time I work in the afternoon and at night. So it's just shift the timetable forward several hours during the day. But I think one of the reasons why I got that many papers is that in finance, I don't know about accounting honestly. In finance, sometimes we have some journals that consider short papers. Let's say 2,000 words, 3,000 words with 10, 15 pages or something like that. And I have several short papers like that. And for those short papers, it just took me around maybe 1 or 2 months for one. Because short papers are basically like a short message. You did something interesting. The contribution is not doesn't need to be very large. As long as it's topical and appealing to readers, then they will publish it. So that's why I have several short papers. In terms of long papers, like a full-length paper, I think I had maybe 9 or 10 only. But I think I benefited quite a lot from the first year where I spent quite a lot of time learning the programming skills, also reading the literature. Because as I said before, programming skills help me a lot in terms of saving time very quickly. And when I need to go back and revise the paper and even revise the results, it's just like running the code, running the same line of code and modify the code, but not the data or not. I don't have to copy and paste from the Excel file basically. So that's why it saved me quite a lot of time because of that. So any other question? Yeah, I saw some other question in the chat box as well, but is your call Poppy to?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then we move to another question from Aan Kanivia. Okay, I would like to ask how important is the use of statistical methods and that data visualization in reputable journals?
Yes. Thanks, Kiki, for asking the question. Is that from Kiki, right?
From Aan.
From Aan.
Yeah.
I think Kiki also asked the same question in here. I saw it on the chat box. Anyway, it is important, as I said, but so what was your question, Poppy? Because I was reading the Kiki's question at that time. I don't have access to the question, so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The question is how important is how important is the use of statistical methods and data visualization in reputable journals?
As I said before, based on experience, the simpler the better. You just some techniques you learn from the econometrics textbook, some basic econometric textbook or statistical textbook are enough. For example, in finance, we mostly just use some technique like ordinary least square, fixed effect, propensity score matching. Sometimes there's some other tests, but those are the most basic one and the most frequently used one. So I think that in the top journals, people don't really value the complexity of the methodology. Maybe they do in other kind of journals like statistics or econometrics or mathematics, something like that. But I'm not very sure about accounting. But in finance, people value more about the research question and the story and the data, and also the statistical techniques are just the tools, right? So you can use if you're able to use very simple tools to fix things, then why do we need the very complicated one, right? And I think as a finance and sometimes, and I think accounting the same, we focus more on the story. So as long as your research questions are appealing and your stories are believable, then and you're able to use some data and basic econometrics to show the result that support your story and your hypothesis, then I think it's gonna be fine.
Okay, thank you. And
because
then
I during my time I mostly focus on programming skill, but not the statistical skills. Programming is very different from statisticals, because programming skill is just like organize the code, like tell the computer to analyze the data for me in any particular way. But statistics are more about mathematics. I'm not very good at mathematics, honestly, so I didn't focus on that area.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Lei. And then another question from Kiki. I think it is closely related to the previous questions, about coding and programming skills. Could you recommend any resources of platforms where our students can learn these skills on their own?
You're right, Kiki. Mostly I just learned by myself, because you were at UWA as well. You know that there's no formal trainings about those things, right? So my recommendation is some of the resources is from some online courses like Coursera or Datacamp. I'm not advertising any of them, but I found them quite useful. They have some free courses for beginners, so they help you to like how to install the software, how to make yourself familiar with the platform, how to write some very first simple code. So I think for very like to start at the very beginning, those introductory courses, online introductory courses from Datacamp or Coursera or something like that. I think Datacamp is the most useful one. But to apply those things more particularly in the research area, I think some textbook that are designed specifically for that research area are more useful. For example, in finance, I came across several textbook about, like, for example, R programming or Python programming for finance or something like that. They're very practical because they give you some practical example, and you can just follow the example. They give you the kind of the research question in the finance, and they give you some sample data, and you analyze the sample data to answer that kind of sample question. And by mostly it's just like learning by doing. So I think for those materials, you just go into like Google, like recommended, for example, some search term like recommended textbook in whatever language you want, Python, R, or Stata, or etc. In accounting, and there are quite a lot of good recommendation in there, especially from some uh, um, what's that, the online forum like Stack Exchange. I'll write down in here. Something like that. It is the community of the programmers and statisticians, and so they know a lot about all the programming languages, so they can give you a better recommendation about the books, the specific books in accounting. Because I'm not in accounting, so I'm not very sure that I can can point you guys to any specific resources.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Bu Kiki, do you still have any question?
Thank you for the answer. I think that's also very important because I remember that I just learned about R quite late during my third year, because I was like really get caught up with my design at the time, and I remember that I always come to lie every time I have an error code. So I think that is very important for our students to also understand that these skills actually learnable by themselves, so they can actually learn this coding skill and programming skill on their own. So that's thank you very much, Lai, for the recommendations. Yeah, hopefully our
Thanks,
students
Kiki.
follow up with that. Well, actually, I have another one question, if I may, Bu.
Yeah, sure.
I was just wondering, because I remember during our PhD days, as you were mentioned, that I think you're incredibly hardworking person and very dedicated. You were the one that's staying in the office while many of us were probably working independently as well. Only God knows whether we're actually working independently or just looking for distractions.
Sleeping.
Yeah.
Not like that, just because I was looking after my daughter when you guys working.
Okay. But I was wondering, is there any changes in the approach in which you work, particularly because now that you're a lecturer compared to when you were in a PhD, with added responsibilities of teaching and then also doing research and academic service, how has your approach to working, especially in managing research, has evolved? Maybe you can share a bit to us. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very interesting question. When I wrote those slides, I mostly target PhD students. So based on the information I got from Kiki by emails. So I didn't share anything about my different life as a lecturer in here. Actually, my approach to my timetable is quite different because, as a lecturer, we obligated to teach, right? And teachings are quite time consuming. So that's why I feel that my research is kind of slowing down at the moment. Because when we did PhD, we only work like 3 hours per week for tutoring and without any other obligation. But now it's like 40% research, 40% teaching, and 20% service. So but in terms of research, I try to spare at least 2 full days during the week to focus totally on research. Because teaching is very distracting because sometimes well, students come to see me. Sometimes I have to revise the materials, and before the lecture, usually I have to or not I have to, but I prefer to spend some time to revise all the materials and think about what I'm gonna talk to students during the lecture. So basically, on the teaching days, I couldn't do any research. So that's why I try to completely separate the research days and teaching days. That is one of my approach. The other approach in terms of research is to try to focus, try to find the time I can work on my own. Because as a lecturer, maybe a lot of you guys here also working as a lecturer, we have other like family commitment, we have our kids around, right? Our husband and wives asking us to drive them somewhere, right? So I try to find some time I can work on my own. For example, during the daytime, of course, when all of them are away. And sometimes I can find nighttime very appealing because my kids are in bed and my wife also are in bed. I can work not that much, like a couple. And during those nighttime, I prefer to read because it is very quiet environment. I can totally focus on what I'm doing, and think. And during the daytime, mostly I spend time on, let's say, analyzing the data and doing some work that require less concentration or less focus, because when analyzing the data or write a code, it doesn't require too much concentration. We don't have to complete like 100% focus on what we're doing. Like writing, for example, it requires a lot of focus. We need to carefully select the word and the way we formulate the sentence, right? So I usually allocate those texts to the time when I'm all alone, working on my own. But when I'm surrounded by others, I use those time to do something else, which requires less focus, like data analysis or data collection, or sometimes talk to other researchers about our research project. Because talking is useful, but sometimes it's also distracting,
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Lai. Okay, we move to another question from Askarian. How can we improve the clarity and conciseness of our writing to meet journal standards?
The short answer is practicing. Just read and practice. I think I also put that point in my presentation. The more you read, the better you write. So I was a terrible writer. I still am now, honestly. But I think my writing is improved quite a lot by reading and also revising my own writing. Okay. So when you read, you try to pick a top tier journal. Let's say you know about ranking, right? Try to pick the journal from at least Q1, or if you use a BDC, A star at least. Sometimes it can be top A, something like that. So those journals those papers are usually written by very good researchers, and they know exactly how to write. So and just copy their writing style, right? So use their writing style, and also maybe you can, if possible, you may send your writing to someone more senior than you and better in the writing game, and ask them to help you to revise a little bit. And by comparing your own writing and the revised version, so you can see the difference. One of my recommendations is that don't use the what's the word, the revision service from journal or something like that, like the third party service that help you to revise the writing or something like that. I wasted quite a lot of money on those services, and when I receive the revised version, usually they are writer, they are good writer, they are very good at English, honestly, but they are not researchers. They are not accounting researchers, they are not finance researchers, so they don't know what we are talking about. So sometimes they revised our paper in the way that, well, in terms of English, it reads better, but the sentence lose all the meanings or lose all the implication we want to send to the readers. So that's why I say that if possible, send the papers to someone in your area and good and better at writing to revise. Don't use the writing service or revising service from any other company. It's just waste of money.
Okay, thank you. And then there is also a question from Siva. How should respond the reviewer when they ask something that we are unable to do?
It's very difficult question. I don't know the answer for sure, honestly. But if we are, I think the best we can do when we are the best thing we can do when we unable to follow the or to do the test or the analysis that the reviewer request is to explain. We try to explain that why we unable to do that. It could be a lot of reason, maybe because of the data availability, because maybe you find that that analysis is irrelevant to your paper, because you understand the paper more, and sometimes, well, the reviewer just came up with the idea in maybe 5 minutes, right? So sometimes it can be irrelevant, and sometimes because of data availability. And if you explain it very clearly, I don't say that would be 100% that the reviewers will happy with that, but at least you can you explain very clearly why you can't do that in very details, and just hope that they will let it go. Sometimes I was successful and sometimes I wasn't. So I don't say that that strategy is 100% successful, but it could be useful sometimes, and that is the best we can do. Just explain. We very politely we need to agree that, well, it may be relevant, it may work, but we're unable to do. Or if it is relevant based on your opinion, you need to explain that. But when you explain, I think you also need to show that, well, you understand their request comprehensively, completely understand the request and why they came up with that request. And then you go back to them and say, because of this, we are unable to do so. So, and sometimes they can happy with that because they, at the end of the day, the reviewers are just other researchers, right? So if we respect them and we acknowledge that their recommendations, we acknowledge their suggestions, and so even sometimes we can't do, and they're still happy because their opinions are listened. So I think that maybe someone are very harsh. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Okay, thank you. It means that we do not have to meet all the requests from the reviewers, right?
Yeah, we don't have
There's
to. But
yeah,
try
there's
to do all. But if you're unable to, you don't have to.
yeah, there is always space for negotiation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
At the end of the day, the editor is the one who made the final decision, not the
Not the
reviewers.
reviewers. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So the editors can override the reviewers' opinion. So if you even sometimes the reviewers and the author can disagree, the editor can override the decision from the reviewers actually.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Is there any questions? No, no more questions. Okay, I have one question, Lei. Yeah, based on my experience supervising my students, sometimes the problem is not really about their understanding about like methodology or the theory or things like that, but the problem sometimes is more practical and personal. Like they are tribe of being perfectionist. You know what I mean? They were, yeah. What do you say about that?
What do you mean by perfection?
I mean, yeah, they just want to have their paper perfect, and it will take more times, and then they submit their work to me after a long time, and I don't think that that kind of work is like efficient for me. Yeah. If
I know what you
yeah,
mean. It's like
mm,
I think it's from the it's a kind of a cultural reason in here. Like the student always want to be looked perfect, from the supervisors or teachers. I think something like that. So I don't have too much experience supervising PhD student. I only have one this year, and I'm going to supervise another one next year. So, but based on my relations with my former PhD supervisors, I think at the beginning we need to be very about our relations. I don't know about the Indonesian culture, but in Indonesia, PhDs all the time as co-authors. We still need advice from them, but if PhD students are good enough, just I think we just need to treat them as a co-authors. So anything they come up with, we discuss. So it's somehow related to the point when we try to break the big project into very small types before. So whenever there's something coming up, we discuss and incorporate in the paper right away. I don't know about the process, formal procedure in your institution, but for my PhD student and also with my supervisors, I usually have like a shared folder between me and them, and because of that, everything they work on we can see, and everything they work on I can see, right? So I can jump into the project at any point, and I don't need to wait for them to report to me formally, right? So I will check with them after like a couple of days or maybe 1 week. Like, well, how is the progress? Where's the data? Where's the file? Where's your writing? Where's your code? Where's your data? So I can jump into the folder and see the progress directly. So I think that kind of supervising style works better to me because I can keep a closer eye on what my PhD student is doing, and I can solve the problem on spot. I don't want to wait like after 1 month and um, to form a report. I can ask them like instantly, what's the problem? So why you didn't work on the file for like 2 or 3 days or something like that. So just a very quick email on. I think communication is the key. So we need to communicate with PhD student more because I think PhD student are will soon one day our colleagues. So we need to treat them as almost as the colleague or the co-author in our project. And also almost all the time PhD student knows more about the project than we do. So if we communicate with them more frequently, we will understand the project more. And it's like our involvement and our contribution to the project will be more. So when people ask us like what we are working on, it's not just the title of the project or the simple thing. We know exactly every details within that project, even if we didn't do the analysis directly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Is there any more question from the audience?
Maybe from your last questions.
Okay, yeah, sure, Prof.
Okay, Dr. Lei, maybe you can share your experience because almost our PhD student and also masters. As we know that English is not our mother tongues. So that's why some of those maybe get difficulty when try to transform a word that in their mind to how to write. So sometimes they are not confident to submit a paper, maybe regarding about the quality of the English quality. So maybe you can suggest them how to improve their confidence and in terms of the English language as term of communication writing skill. I mean, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Iko. I think yeah, every researchers agree that writing is the most important part of a research project, especially in social science like accounting and finance and economics. So you raise very important question. That's very good question. Based on my experience, I think even if our English is not perfect, we are not native speaker for sure. We still can make a good contribution with good communication as long as we are clear and concise. So if again, my recommendation is to read more. Okay. So when you read, you may write down some you may realize some frequently used sentence or frequently used writing style in some papers, like how they write the introduction, what sentence usually used to start a paper, how they cite another paper, how they present their ideas, how they present the results, or something like that. So they are quite formulated, I guess. So if students read enough, I think they will get some sense about how to structure the sentence at least, and also to structure the paper. And in terms of each, like the word usage within the sentence, I think it's the best to use the simple words, simply because we can use it and everyone can understand it. Right? Don't try to like I wrote in my presentation. Don't try to write like you do in IELTS. Try to write in using very simple words and very straightforward words. Okay. To write perfectly, I think it's very hard. But to write effectively and to make our paper easy to understand, I think it doesn't. Recommendation I can make is to well, sometimes you don't know what to start. I came across a lot of scenarios like that where I have some idea, I have some analysis, and I have no idea what to start in the introduction. But my experience is that as long as you start, then the progress will be much faster. Whatever you start, whatever you wrote in there. So let's say for one day you write 2 pages, but tomorrow you go back and try to revise what you wrote, right? You already have some idea about what you wrote in there, and today you come back with the fresher mind. Maybe you have a better idea about how to revise your writing. Okay, so my recommendation is to write out whatever you think about. Even maybe you think that it is really bad. It's still worth writing down, right? Other than just wait and think more. So I think writing is a process. It requires a lot of revision, but you need to start as soon as possible. And because of that, you have something to revise later. And the more you revise, you realize that it will get better over time. So it means that the sooner you start, the better product you're gonna get at the end of the project. So that is all my recommendation in terms of writing. I think the documents from Professor Cochrane, 2005, is very useful. It provides very concise and useful tips about how to write and also how to present in as a PhD student. So I highly recommend having that document under your pillow to read.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any more questions? Okay, if there is no question, then we just about at the end of the sessions. Allow me to briefly summarize what we discussed today. Okay. Okay, publications are important as they bring some benefits, including better job opportunity and then better performance is if we talk in a higher education level. And then a good paper should provide contributions and then theoretical foundation, methodological rigor, structure and flow, and it needs a good writing skill. And then the speaker has also explained about how to get ideas and then some tips into writing paper and then submit the paper. And also the speaker also gives some practical strategy or tips like time management, yeah, that the student should have to complete their work. Okay, before we end this session, I would like to ask Dr. Hoang to say some words as a closing statement.
I didn't prepare anything for that, but thank you very much for having me today. I was very surprised to see like 90 something or even sometimes more than 100 participants attending. So it's a big shock to me, honestly, because it's the first time I'm doing something like this. And thank you very much for inviting me. I think I prepared the slide deck yesterday, and I think it was very good reflection for me on experience for me on reflecting what I have done so far during my PhD. Actually, I never thought back about my PhD journey, probably because I'm too busy to do something else and move on with other stuff. But it was very good experience reflecting on my experience during my 4-year PhD, recall what I have done, what I have learned, and also it's very I really appreciate that I have some opportunity to share them with you guys in here, a very broad range of audience, some professors who are, of course, at very much higher rank than me, and also some other university staff and PhD attending this seminar, you have more motivation to follow or to pursue your PhD journey after finishing your master. Thank you very much, all you guys, for joining. So all of them are just my personal experience, and maybe you can find some works for you, some might not work, but at least I share something, and at least you know that you can see that something doesn't work, and then you can try other ways, right? So yeah, that's all from me today. Really enjoying session, and a lot of questions from the audience, and hopefully I will help some you guys to learn a little bit more about the publication process. If you have any further question or clarification, please feel free to email me. Kiki have my email, and I also give you guys my personal Google site, so you can write to me using my personal email or UWI email if you want. So thank you very much for that, and hopefully we can meet in person sometimes in the future, or maybe even collaborate to do something. Yeah, we never know, right?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So to end this session, I would like to thank our amazing speaker for sharing his thoughts and also some of his ideas. And I think all the recommendations are learnable and also applicable for the student, because most of the time the speakers discuss all the things from the perspective of PhD students, which we do appreciate about that. And thank you so much for the participants, for all of your wonderful questions. And then thank you so much for your time and your active participation during the sessions. Hope to see you again at our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much. And I hand over the screen to the Master of Ceremony. Thank you, Lei.
Thank you, Poppy. Yeah.
All right, thank you for Dr. Lai Hyang for the insightful presentation, and also Dr. Papi Dian Indra Kusuma, SAMSE AKCA, for your guidance during the main session. Now we will proceed to the symbolic handover of certificates of appreciation for our distinguished speaker and moderator. First, we would like to present the certificate to our speaker in recognition of his invaluable contribution and insightful presentation during today's webinar. For Professor Dr. Eko Siono, MSI AKCA CPA, is welcome to symbolically hand over the certificate to our respected speaker.
Okay, really appreciate Dr. Lang for your time giving us many insights. So this may be our certificate for you for acknowledgement to your participation, improving the quality of publication in our institution. Again, thank you so much, and maybe keep in touch. We can do the same thing on the futures. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very interested in doing so. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we would like to present the certificate to our moderator, Dr. Poppy Dian Indra Kusuma, SAMSI AKCA, for her excellent guidance throughout the session. For Mrs. Christina Tri Setiorini, SAMSI AK PhD CA, is welcome to symbolically hand over the certificate to our respected moderator.
Okay, thank you, Diandra. And Dr. Poppy Dian Indira Kusuma, SMSC AKCA, thank you so much for your guidance. And hopefully next time we can have a good webinar in next future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bu Christina.
Yeah.
All right, thank you once again to Dr. Lai Hyang and Dr. Poppy Dian Indra Kusuma, SAMSI AKCA, for your contributions to today's event. Finally, as we approach to the end of today's webinar, I would like to thank Dr. Lai Hyang for his invaluable insight and Dr. Poppy Dian Indra Kusuma, SAMSI AKCA, for moderating, and all participants for their active engagement throughout the session. We hope today's webinar has been beneficial and inspiring for everyone. We apologize for any shortcomings during the event, and we deeply appreciate your understanding. I, as the MC, Diana Tabida, would like to thank all of you for your time and participation. And this concludes our webinar. Have a great day, and we're looking forward to seeing you at our future events. Goodbye, and thank you, everyone.